Coming up in today's episode, Tesla sets a new quarterly record, Orion spacecraft test flight goes very well, and NASA gears up to land on Titan with a helicopter. Let's get ludicrous. Hey there, welcome to Our Ludicrous Future. This is the podcast where we talk about all the cool stuff happening now that's going to make our future totally funny and weird and ridiculous and ludicrous. I am Joe Scott with the Answers with Joe YouTube channel. With me is two guys in the same place hanging out without me.
Hey-o. Yeah. Sorry, man.
They're so
We're
happy.
on another planet.
Yeah. Look at where are we? We're straight up in space right now. That's all that matters.
This is actually the New Shepard or New Glenn. Which one is it? That
All of them.
what's the cylinder that's gonna?
You're thinking O'Neill cylinders.
O'Neill. There we go. Same.
Well, anyway, hi. I'm Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut from the Everyday Astronaut Stuff on the internet. And with me in person in the Tomorrow Studios, the TMRO Studios right here in Anaheim, California, is Ben Solons.
What's up, guys? It's Ben Solons from Teslanomics. Yeah. Little
Yeah.
quick drive up from San Diego.
Yeah. Got
Pretty
some
cool
breakfast this
space.
morning. Real quick shout out to our friends at Tomorrow for just being like, yeah, take the studio. It took us 45 manic minutes, an hour of, this is the most advanced studio in the world.
Well, it's in space, so clearly,
Yeah.
there was a lot that went into it.
And poor Joe's sitting there in Texas, like waiting. So if you're listening to this, you're missing out. I mean, this is a visual treat here.
That is.
It looks
Yeah,
like
and
so
so we have
the new Cosmos TV series.
Yes.
Well, not to give anything away, Joe.
Oh, sorry, spoiler alert. Forgot that.
But yeah, we have Joe like on a big screen monitor. We're listening to this is the highest tech thing that's ever existed.
Yeah.
So
this is the most
so
production I
with
think
that, if this is the worst sounding, worst production
We don't know how
of
it's
any of
gonna
our
turn
things, it would be me messing it up because I have no idea what I'm doing. I just hit a bunch of buttons and hope that it turned out okay. So
Tim's in charge of production. That was the deal.
So if it sounds terrible, looks terrible, and Joe cuts out every 5 seconds, it's literally all my fault. So
You don't know how to handle all that power.
I don't. I have no idea what I'm doing. Yeah. So good luck, us.
And
Let's
also,
see how this episode goes.
I am not usually the one that like shares the screens and stuff, so I'm kind of like the one switching back and forth. So
we're trying to set the bar low.
Yeah, this is managing.
We need to just reduce expectations here. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we had this is funny. We're talking about only NASA in the space world for me this week, which is, I'm wearing a NASA shirt, I guess. I didn't mean to.
Yeah.
Look at that. Repping NASA. Yeah. So
big week. And speaking of expectations, Tesla happened to destroy all the hopes and dreams of the Tesla short sellers. They really just ruined their whole future.
Yet their stock went down yesterday.
Well, overall went up though.
Did it? Okay.
Yeah, because I think they released the numbers. So Tesla numbers, Q2 2019, massive.
Hold up, can you see it?
record. Yeah, we got it. And this is like half self promo, half like just the best graphics for the user. So, yeah. So for Q2 of 2019, Tesla just finally released their numbers. Massive success here. Model S and X, 17,650. Model 3, 77,550 cars delivered. That's a total delivery number of 95,200, smashing their old record of 90,700, I believe it was, in Q4 of 2018. And deliveries, remember, is when the person has everything kind of all the paperwork done. They actually have possession of the car. It's not like, hey, they agreed and they signed a contract. Like, no, it's actually theirs. And so, Q1 was down largely due to the logistic issues of shipping that many vehicles to Asia and to Europe. And now the deliveries are happening in the UK. So right-hand drive is coming. I don't think I've seen anything about Australia yet. But presumably that's on the radar too. So massive success here for Tesla, which is why their stock today, after these numbers came out, is up. I think last I looked about 7%.
Okay.
So yeah, big stuff. I mean, what do you guys think? Like, it's a big number.
I mean, I think most of us kind of expected this because they kept saying like, this is going to be a huge quarter because we're finally getting that pipeline kind of in in play here. Yeah, Joe, this is about what, because we've talked about this. Is this about what you were expecting too, or?
I mean, they kept saying it was going to be a big quarter, so I thought it might be close, maybe tie the old record. But I did notice that I guess the shorts, the analysts, whatever word you want to use, they in the last week or so started like, it became this thing of if they didn't break a record, well, it was an utter failure.
Yeah.
You know, like they went from, oh, they can't do whatever to, oh, well, if they don't have, 800 million this month, then they failed.
Well, but
they were setting the groundwork
then,
for them to not make it, but then they did. So they're going to have to turn this around, and they will.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, they'll find some other way to try to discredit them or whatever. But the thing that stuck out to me here, obviously it's a big number, but this was a case where, I mean, Elon, obviously when he sends an email, knows it's going to get leaked. There's just no way around that. I mean, I'm sure they actually try not to do that, and they're probably pretty hardcore about that. But with that many people at a company, it's going to happen. So he sort of under-promised and over-delivered here, because a lot of them were like, I don't know, if we really push hard, we can maybe beat it. You beat it by like a huge margin, by like 5,000 cars almost. Yeah. I mean, it's not like you got 91,000 or 92,000. Like, this was like a massive overshooting of that target there. So that's, I mean, that to me was like, oh, he actually was kind of downplaying. Like, some of the leaked emails saying we could beat it, they already beat it, right? Like, they already probably, because they're delivering 1,000 a day, roughly.
But those leaked emails, even if they're a week ago, would be 88,000.
Right. But I mean, you could look at the trend. Like you knew you were going to beat it with those emails still going out. So I was pretty impressed by that.
I mean, it's over, but I wouldn't say it's like blowing out of the water. Like, whoa, over. I mean, it's 5%, 6% over.
Right.
Previous year. So it's not like 30, 50, 100% increase. But I mean, that's a good trend, obviously. I just want to make sure we're not like hyperbolizing.
Right.
They smashed record, destroyed all, like 5%.
See, what we need is the who's the money guy with all the bells and whistles and things you hit? The Kramer guy. We need that. Yeah, we'll go to his set next time. We'll start throwing things.
There you go.
To compare it against something, or go ahead, Joe.
You have some more charts. Yeah, let me put that up.
Yeah, so the real comparison. The way you look at this is year over year performance, and if you look at this compared to Q2 of last year, they're up 134%. Now from Q1, they're up 51%. I think I don't have the number in front of me, but the last time I looked at it, I believe that's what it was. So yeah, I mean, that's a massive jump over last year, and we kind of saw that coming with the Q4 number. And then we saw the big drop in Q1, which was largely due again to shipping, tackling all those challenges. But now that they're there, Tesla even stated in the statement that they're going into Q3, into Q3, that they have a new backlog of like more orders than they could possibly even fulfill. So what that signifies to me is that Q3 is again going to be kind of record breaking. I don't know if they're going to be able to best this by much. Like they might be hitting that kind of top line of what is even possible for them. But there were, I think, 7,500 cars or maybe 7,400 cars in transit at the end of the quarter. So that would put them over 100,000 vehicles delivered if they were able to actually count those in it. So.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was bringing up last week, was like, there's got to be, until they have a new factory, there's got to be a ceiling to their numbers that they can reach, and they've got to be pretty close to it at this point. I think it's going to be incremental until some new factories come online.
Yeah, I mean, 1,000 cars a day for a quarter gets you at like 90,000 cars.
Yeah.
And they already hit 95, going on 96,000. So yeah, I mean, they're definitely right there. Now there probably was, because now they're shipping these cars overseas. If there's bad weather and it arrived a day later than it had planned, then it could significantly change that number. Right. So I think there's other things to consider here when it comes to that. So yeah, let's keep going on these numbers.
Chart here.
Let's see. Give me more charts now. The original estimate I had for them for 2019 was 380,000. After we got, this was before the Q1 number. After we got the Q1 number, and now looking at this, I'm putting them decreasing that slightly to 372,000. So still, going to be a monster year for Tesla this year. Next year, well, and then China factory coming online a little bit this year. They said 3,000 cars per week. What they're trying to ramp to this year. That would be stellar. I would be shocked if they hit that, but whatever. Like, there's going to be some cars coming out of China this year. Next year, China factory should really start to hit its stride. So I'm looking at over 500,000 cars for next year at this point. And then beyond that, there's we're touching 1 million cars per year. So really hitting a big numbers here now.
Did you see any numbers? Have the Model S and X sales gone down the past couple quarters?
Yes, they have. And I touched on that in my video as well. I think that a large part of that is due to the refresh that everyone is expecting. We know that they recently did some small updates that added some range, but other than that, the car is still basically the same. So I think there's been more leaks and more information coming out about a big refresh for the Model S. Haven't really seen much for Model X, but I assume that some of that would probably translate over. And then if that happens, if you're getting over 400 miles, better performance, sales are going to go up on those cars. So I would expect to see some of that later in the year, but by far the volume sales is going to be the Model 3. There's no question about that until possibly the Model Y comes out.
Yeah.
We do have some more numbers here, Joe. One of them was, so I show this chart every time I look at these numbers. And if you guys are listening, I'll just try to describe it to you. The Tesla Model 3 is a mid-size luxury sedan. That's how it's technically classified. So, all other publications try to massage the numbers and kind of compare it, differently. And I think there's merit to some of those ways. But if you're just looking at it how it's technically classified, the Tesla Model 3 has basically already sold double what the next closest competitor, which is the Lexus ES, has sold. These numbers were as of May, so that didn't include June, which was some of the numbers that Tesla just released. So this gap is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So in this space, the mid-size luxury auto sales, the Model 3, even actually in the first quarter, sold more cars than all of the other competitors did for the entire year in 2018. So this is just going to be, if you look at it that way, it's going to be monster. I'm really hoping that the Model 3 keeps an American car company in the top 5 cars sold in the U.S. They were the only ones that did that last year. With volume production now, chances are that they'll be able to do it again. Maybe they'll even break top 4. It's crazy because the cars you're competing against are significantly cheaper.
Yeah,
it's Honda Accord, Honda
stuff.
Civic, Toyota Camry, Toyota Corolla. Those are your top 4 passenger vehicles, not trucks and SUVs and stuff. But then, Tesla Model 3 was number 5 last year. So you're looking at it going, just man, if they can really, keep up with those guys, then that something big is happening there.
Yeah, dang. Speaking of the refresh, you mentioned it real quick. I did get a ride in a refresh P100D Model S. My friend Eli, who has a Tesla on Twitter and Instagram, is My Tesla Adventure. He has a Starman suit, which is pretty sweet too. I'm sure you guys have all seen those pictures and stuff. He gave me a ride in his P100D Ludicrous. It's stupid.
It is, right?
It's dumb. It's dumb.
It is.
It's you can't even describe it. It's just like, ow.
Yeah. And you have a performance Model 3.
Yeah.
So you know what good performance is, and then you get in that, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And it's insane to see tires that are, I don't even know, 14 inches wide or whatever, struggle, trying so hard to keep up with the car. Just, you can tell each one of them just constantly having to traction control to make it so it can, and you're just like, oh my God.
Was the interior different at all?
Not at all.
Not at all? Okay. Because my friend, you guys know him, Dan from What's Inside, he met up with Casey, who just did his cross-country road trip, and Casey has a Model X, I think it's a P100D, and Dan got in it, and he called me afterwards. He was like, the interior was different. He was like, some of the bezels were gone. It was definitely different than his. And I was like, oh, this is weird.
I don't think I would have known. I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with an S to sit in and
it's probably minor. I know if you look at my Model X versus a newer one, some of the buttons are different. A lot of those, it's minor kind of things.
Yeah, I don't think I would have a good enough.
Yeah, I would love to.
This one is more oak than birch.
Look at that wood grain pattern, slightly.
Well, it's like buttons and things, and I think the bezels are the thing that make it feel kind of outdated for me. Around the screens, it's big, fat, silvery chrome kind of bezels. It's just a little bit as my wife said, ornate.
Yeah.
Which, it's a thing.
Can I ask a question really quick before I forget?
No.
This is sort of on topic and sort of not. Sentry mode. It's about Sentry.
Yeah.
Okay, so for somebody who owns a Tesla, I'm actually a surprisingly late adopter to most things. I actually just used it for the first time, I don't know, last week or something like that. And I get back in my car, and I'm asking this for anybody else out there who might have been as confused as I was, but I get back in my car and the little thing says two events occurred, or there were two events that recorded or whatever. Mm-hmm. So first of all, you can't just pull that up on the screen, can you?
Not yet.
No. Okay. So you have to take the drive out, the little USB drive, and I go to my computer and I plug it in, and it wasn't like, I still had to like search through everything to find the events that it was talking about. So is that normal?
Either of that's how it is. But there are people that have actually mobile apps that are called Sentry viewers. I think there's a bunch of free ones out there. There's a couple paid ones out there. And I haven't used one, but the way I understand it works is you have like some sort of dongle that plugs into the USB stick plugs into, and then your phone reads that, and it gives you kind of like a timeline of them, and you can just see it displayed. So it's a bit easier to view that, because there's sort of I think a naming convention of the files. But right now, it definitely, like my wife was using it the other day. She got in, she called me, same question, like, how do you do this? I'm like, is there any damage to the car? And she's like, no. I'm like, okay, then whatever. Like,
I think that's the point right now, is that if you walk up to your car and you notice a big scratch or something, then you at least know you had the file. But for now, it's still a very primitive system.
Yeah.
And just like all things like that, where they're constantly updating it, I think that, and they've mentioned that even that, or they someday will have a viewer like on the screen, so you can just be like, "Oop, okay, I don't need that."
I do like that you can enable and disable it just from the home screen now.
Yeah, that's very slick.
Yeah, because previously having to go into the menus and stuff is like, who's going to do this?
Right.
Like, and you get from your phone too, which is nice, which is typically what we do. We'll walk away and I'm like, oh, did we turn that on? Let me go, turn it on. So,
food for thought. Don't leave it on if you're at an airport. Because I was gone for, I don't know, like almost a week when I went to Washington State and Washington, D.C. I was gone for about a week, and I left Sentry mode on for like 4 days, and it does actually drain probably like 6, 7, 8% of battery a day on Sentry mode. And I had to drive back, 65 miles.
Yeah.
So I caught it about day 3. I'm like, this is significant drain because it was Sentry mode. So I turned that off and it was fine.
In Tesla Lab, we're trying to find a way to figure out when a Sentry mode is enabled, because we monitor phantom drain.
Oh, right.
And every now and then, I mean, you can almost tell just by looking at how much phantom drain people have.
Yeah.
Being like, there's no possible way you had this much phantom drain and you weren't in Sentry mode.
Right. Yep.
Unless you were like Phoenix in the middle of the summer and your car's just parked outside.
And you're
something.
keeping it at 70 degrees.
Yeah. Like you can almost tell just by the data when Sentry mode is on. But we're trying to find a way to look at the logs and say, oh, it was active.
Yeah.
But it's not totally obvious from what we've seen. Because that would be a good thing, is to actually show a study just to see, okay, for thousands of cars, here's what we're actually seeing. So you can get a sense of that. Yeah, it's really good. I think if you're just like parked in a public space, but
that's good info for people out there, because I hadn't seen it anywhere about the Sentry mode thing. I just thought that I thought worst case scenario, you would plug in your USB drive and it would have like a little folder with events or whatever. And no, I had to like hunt through all the footage to find it. And I was like, did I do something wrong? So
no,
it's
it
is the answer always.
The answer, yes.
There is a thing. So just to give you some more ludicrous future stuff in this space, I've been working with a friend, and this is an open source project, so anyone can go find it. But there's actually a really cool thing where you can trick the car into storing the files on a Raspberry Pi. And once the files are being stored on a Raspberry Pi, it can recognize events, and then it can do something with the footage, meaning it'll actually have the files on the Raspberry Pi. So he's been in Japan for a month, so it's been slow, but we've been working on a system that would essentially, when a Sentry event pops in and it drops the file on there, have it text you immediately. Because on your phone, you should get a notification. So like Sentry mode event occurred, but that's all you get. Like you don't even know what happened. And then when you get in the car, you don't have any easy way to view it, right? So imagine a system in which you had this app or whatever. And, you know, again, you'd have to like have a Raspberry Pi in your car. Like there's a lot of setup here, but for people that are more interested or hackers, DIY, maker kind of folks, like I think it'd be fun. And we've been working on it to be able to do that. So like, yeah, you just hook this thing up and then, you know, you can just easily kind of have those things just flow to you if and when they occur.
That's crazy. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing is, I think by the time I went through all that effort to make that work, I'll bet by then there'd already be a software update that like
that's the thing.
all.
But you know, it's just, this is why it's not like, hey, let's make a business out of this. It's just like, whatever, let's just kind of hack it. And he's already got the piece working where it saves the images to the Raspberry Pi. So then we just need to work on the part of actually sending them out. So then there's a lot of challenges because
so it would actually send the video or the text to your phone?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Now the challenge is that the Raspberry Pi needs to have constant power and it has to have like an LTE connection. Right. And these things are all totally possible, but it's just like
pretty in deep. Like eventually you're another modem and
yeah. So eventually you just hit a point where you're like, who's going to really do this? Like I'll do it for fun and just to do a video out of it, but a reasonable person's not going to go this far.
Yeah.
So some of those other apps are probably more, you know.
Yeah. It would be cool if they just kind of like, if the Tesla app, when there was an event, just kind of sent you a little thing and you could just stream the clip and see it from your phone and you're sitting in the restaurant like, oh, okay, that's nothing, and go on with your life.
Now, would you pay for that? Would you pay for an add-on service, $10 a month for cloud storage of those things?
I mean, yeah, probably.
Kind of like Nest or one of those where, you can just use it real time without paying for it. But if you want it stored in the cloud and access to it or whatever, I think it'd be cool if they cataloged it, right? It's really easy with all the machine learning stuff nowadays to identify what's happening in a video. In fact, Google ML Lib, I think it's called, or no, I forget what it was called, like Google ML Machine or something has a thing where you can just upload a video file and it'll spit out time codes of like things that happened, like objects it recognized, events that occurred. So in terms of like building a service like that, it's not insurmountable, right? You don't need your own servers or any of that stuff. Like it's pretty.
Maybe we should do that for our podcast because everybody keeps asking for time codes in the description of our videos.
Do they? Yeah, totally.
I've seen that several times.
So, in fact, when I used to do my live show, I had a little button on my little Stream Deck thing, and I would hit a button and it would log a time code.
Whoa, cool.
And I had a Python script I had written that would go take the video file, look at the time codes, and then create highlights of each one.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Dang it, Ben.
So the problem is it didn't work perfectly, so you still had to go edit it.
Yeah.
So at that point you're like, the time code is good enough.
Right.
You know,
right.
Even if it's like a few seconds off.
Yeah.
So that might be a thing. Yeah.
There's someone whenever I do like live streams on YouTube that will go through and do all like the main like ignition, you know, blah 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 and do time codes, and I always just pin that comment because they're awesome.
And then do you delete the waiting screen at the front and it messes all
I don't anymore.
Oh, okay.
I used to, but like now people can there's a countdown timer on it, and if you do that, you messes so much stuff up, and it takes like another like 12 hours to re-render or something, so it's not worth it anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Lazy.
Was that it for numbers, Joe? Was that the last chart we had?
That was the last chart that you wanted me to pull up.
Okay.
Unless there's something else on there that I could scroll to.
There was, I'll just mention it. You don't, if you can find it. It was a chart. So with these numbers, one of the things we do in data analysis is we do baselining. YouTube is actually doing this built in now. So when you log into analytics of a video, it'll show you like based on hour. Yeah, there you go. So if you look and you baseline sales of each or deliveries of each vehicle, you know, from the launch month, you can see the trend. And the Model 3, of course, is like the hockey stick one that just goes almost straight up. Yeah. But it is almost there. It may be as of today, but as of these numbers, the Model S is still the most common Tesla in the world in terms of how many have actually been delivered. But the Model 3 is right there.
I mean,
so
yeah, I bet literally by today.
Yeah, probably by now the Model 3 is essentially the most prevalent one out there in the world. And
someday that Roadster is going to take off, man.
Yeah.
Someday it's going to go up.
So the reason that one ends is because they stopped making
production,
it.
yeah.
Right.
And it's just, by the way, for those of you listening, it's literally just a horizontal line. Like you can't
like
see
I thought it was the bottom of the chart.
Yeah. You thought it was the bottom of the chart. No. That's just how many roads they sold.
Should I just remove it? I spent a whole lot of time trying to, because they weren't a public company. They never actually released the numbers of how many they delivered when. But there was somebody went through Wikipedia and they listed all of the news articles that said, 300 have been delivered.
Oh my God.
And so what I did is I took all those news articles and said, okay, you said 300. Well, a month ago, there was one that said there was 185. Okay, so that means you have this many deliveries between then and then.
Oh God.
So I actually so I think I was just like proud of that data.
I can't even see it. It's just a lot good. So I had to plot a line that went from left to right.
I don't think it adds any value to the story, but
it needs to go down by one because one of them's in space now.
Oh, damn it. So it'll be a super long line, just like
it just kind of dips.
Long line goes down by 1 pixel.
That's right. Well, but this is a cumulative number, so it never goes down. It only goes up.
No, like Joe said, once it's delivered to space, it's no longer on Earth, so it's not even a.
But it still was delivered
To Mars.
This isn't. I should put it.
Not intergalactic. Deliveries.
You need an asterisk. That's like
terrestrial deliveries
within solar system.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, hey, Dang. So I had a thought. Can I share a thought real quick?
Of course.
Is that what I'm here for? Okay, so tell me if you think this is nuts. But when they do get the whole autonomous thing perfected, do you think that would be how they deliver cars? Like literally just let them drive to your house?
Of course. I bet people would have that as an option because some people might not want those additional 800 miles or 1,400 kilometers.
For those of us that don't live 800 miles from a Tesla location.
But I bet that would be an option. Like, do you want the car to deliver itself?
I think there's a bigger question though: is why would you own a car? That's really the thing. Is like so. At some point, if it's truly that good at autonomous driving, why am I going to do? I mean, other than like maybe cost effectiveness over a 30-year time span or something.
Some people just like to have that space, to have that personal space in their car when they drive, and haul stuff around
and keep your stuff in it. There's always a few things that just basically end up never leaving my trunk. That
valuable things.
Ish.
Where do you park?
In Iowa, where I could keep all the doors open for a month and no one would even look at it.
No,
I mean,
sure. Well, but I think that's a serious question. So like our generation, it makes sense. Ownership is something that is just inherent in cars. But the next generation growing up, I don't think they're gonna care as much.
Yeah,
I feel like
this call the one you need.
It's like everybody likes the idea of people going on buses, but nobody wants to take the bus. So it's like everybody likes the idea that, well, when cars are autonomous and nobody will actually own cars anymore, but then you say, well, would you get rid of your car? Well, no. Like I'm kind of looking at you got a second kid on the way. Would you really want to have to carry around 2 child seats every time you got into an autonomous car and drove around? I mean,
boom.
You're going to want to keep your car.
Great point.
No.
Child seats.
I'm not saying which that's my Now, the question would be when my kids have kids, what would they be thinking and wanting to do?
Well, they're going to just be teleported via a thing. Right. They don't need a car. What's a car to them? That's going to be like saying like, I hope my grandkids have an iPhone that can last more than 8 hours. They won't know what an iPhone is. It'll be a telepathy. Yeah, like telepathy.
Virtual universe.
Telepathy. No, but I think by then cars will be vastly different than they are now. In fact, at CES this past year, the theme I saw, which was really weird, were these cube things. And they were like, like a bus, kind of a structure, but they just had like a table in the middle of them.
Yeah.
It's like a little like office cubicle.
Like a conference room on wheels.
Exactly. Yeah. So I could imagine that, down like my grandkids, it'll be totally funny that that I had to actually control the vehicle with a wheel. To my son, it'll probably be, he'll be familiar with it.
Yeah.
Because I'm never getting rid of my cars. But
he'll tell his grandkids someday about how when he was growing up, his dad actually drove his own car.
Yeah, right. And they'll think it's absolutely nuts.
Yeah. I keep thinking about that. Joe and I don't have any kids, not together anyway. And
that would be interesting.
And on our own. But neither of us have kids. And if I have a kid today, I don't think they'd drive. I'm positive they won't.
My son's going to be 4 and he won't drive.
He probably won't drive. Yeah.
I mean, even like younger, my neighbor, one of my best friends, his younger sister, who is like, I think 21 now, is like, she just barely got her license a year ago.
Right.
Yeah. And she doesn't live in like a New York City or something where you really don't need one. She lives in a place where you definitely need a car, but she just would get rides from friends or Uber or whatever. It was like, she just never had the desire to do it.
See, that I know there's probably people out there that are just currently laughing because they live, like in Iowa. If I tell that to most of my friends, they're still just like, they have no context. But you start to see places, I feel like the Midwest in particular always follows the coasts and certain trends. Like, New York City is a perfect example. One of the co-hosts here at the show, Athena, she never had a car, she never had a driver's license, and she just is starting to like work on that in like her mid-20s.
Yeah, right.
She grew up in Brooklyn, or she grew up in like New York City.
Yeah, why would you? The cost is outrageous.
Yeah. So like the idea that like to us it's so like, of course you have a driver's license. Of course when you're 16 you want to get a car. Like those are like American. I want that. I deserve that. But like in the future it's just not even. I don't even think that's going to be a thing.
Right. Transportation is not going to be something you even consider.
Yeah.
Like you don't fly your own plane, right? Just,
Yeah. But even now, I think it's going to be affected by geography. Like you just mentioned, New York. There's a lot of people in New York that most people in New York don't drive their own cars. But rural areas where they have to haul stuff around quite a bit. Of course, they're going to have that. And I'm going to counter my own argument for a second because I do that all the time. I was just thinking, like, you would probably, if you had, autonomous fleets riding around in the transportation cloud and stuff like that, you could probably select a car with car seats in it for kids, or a car with some storage space, or just a storage, a U-Haul or something, to move stuff around if you have to move stuff. Yeah.
Uber has a thing already called Uber Family, and they'll arrive with car seats and stuff like that.
We wondered about that because my whole family was out in Vegas the other week, and there's my nephews are about old enough where they don't really need a car seat.
It's like a booster seat or something.
Yeah, like one of them needs a booster seat still, and then my niece who definitely needs a car seat, and we didn't quite know what the legality was, and luckily, we went like a quarter mile, like off the strip, and she didn't have a car seat. So, but we're all like, is this even like, what do we do?
Well, so it's easy to travel with car seats. It really isn't that big of a deal. And nowadays they're so easy to just clip in.
Yeah.
It's like buckling a seatbelt. I mean, you buckle it in, you tighten it, you kind of make sure, and then you're good. It's not really a big deal. So
but just carrying around a bulky plastic thing to a restaurant is just kind of obnoxious.
Yeah. That's where it gets a little bit different, right? So if you're going to Vegas or something, just go eat at the hotel or somewhere that's walking distance, right? But even then, you have a stroller and stuff. Yeah. Babies are a bit different, but at least babies are easy to handle. They're not like running around and jumping and trying to like throw stuff and like toddlers are. So they're quite a bit easier.
Yeah.
But and then different countries have a thing. Like I remember we were down in Oaxaca, Mexico, the beginning of last year of 2018, and like full on. Went somewhere and we were like, oh crap, and we didn't bring a car seat, and because we like walked somewhere or whatever, and then we were like, we need to take a taxi back, we don't have a car seat. Luckily it was like just a few blocks, but it was one of those things like they don't even care down there. They're like, whatever, just get in the car. So it's definitely a thing, and it's something to consider. But in the future you probably would just have an option like, I've got this many. I think still I would want to own one though. Like there's so many times when it's like, I want to go to the beach. Cool. Well, I don't want to wait 15 minutes for a car to show up.
Yeah.
But I guess if the cost of owning a car is super crazy, or I mean, eventually the question is, will people even be allowed to drive?
Right.
Like how long until that's just illegal, or it's just a hobbyist activity that us nerds do, trying to drag race.
And you have to have a special license to be able to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you already need a special license, I guess. Called a driver's license, Joe.
Well, I went, side little tangent, I went to Laguna Seca this weekend. There was refuel. So I was up in San Francisco on what was that? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And on Sunday, I went with some friends to Laguna Seca. I don't know. But driven it a million times in Gran Turismo growing up. And so it's so fun. I was sending some of my friends that we used to play Gran Turismo together. There's 2 friends that we'd play like after school every day, for like hours. And, Laguna Seca is like one of our favorite tracks. So I sent them like pictures and videos of like, look where I am. It's like one of my friends in Germany, like he crapped his pants. He could not believe it. Like I knew like as soon as I sent him a video corkscrew,
spot, right?
Yep. The corkscrew. As soon as I sent him that, he was just like, no way. I'm like, yeah, baby. So, and I ended up getting a ride. A guy came up to me and my friend I was with, 2 different people gave us each a ride on one of the last laps. So I got a ride in a performance.
Because you can ride in it without having to like be a driver.
Yep, you just have to have a helmet. Yeah. So this guy happened to have a helmet.
Yeah.
He lives here in LA. He was super, super nice. And he was a good driver too. Like he asked like, do you want me to take it kind of easy? I'm like, maybe just like, go down, like if you're trying hardest, maybe just go down a little bit.
You're like, yeah, maybe. He's like,
well, still even him like tuning it down a little bit was unbelievable. Being on a performance Model 3 on a racetrack.
Yeah. Now, did you have any like performance suspension or anything, or was it, other than that, just
stock performance Model 3 tires?
People.
They were all performance Model 3s pretty much on the track. It was the whole thing pretty much. Besides there's a Kia Soul EV, a Fiat 500 EV, a Bolt. It was cool. And some of those actually, the Bolt scooted pretty good on a track.
I've driven a Bolt, and I mean, it's an electric car. It has that instant peak torque. I mean, it's not shabby.
I couldn't believe how quick it was scooting around the track though. I thought on a track it would just fall apart, but it was the driver was good too. Like, I mean, he was just taking nice lines. And so the guy I was with, his name was Kai, I think. Oh man, I'm forgetting. Sorry if you're listening. But he was, and by the end, like he was, you could tell I was getting more comfortable with it too. So he was starting to like be a little more aggressive, and it's unbelievable how hard.
Were there any issues at all with any of the cars? Because I know when the Model S performance first was hitting the tracks,
they were overheating.
Were overheating, yeah. And I still think they're not great track cars, from what I understand.
Well, these were 20-minute sessions, and for a 20-minute session, the car never seemed to slow down or take a hit in that 20-minute period because of track mode. The 3 is set up for that. So if you're an enthusiast and you're going to go to 20 minutes on a track, the Model 3, you cannot. I couldn't tell from the passenger seat that it got any slower. He's still getting tail happy at 75 mile an hour and stuff.
Well, and the thing I heard was that you'll take that to the track, and it's only a few miles. Like you'll be able to do that all day, where actually a gas car has to go refuel because it's to go fast like that. It's just burning through it.
Right.
Did you experience that as well, or was it like, oh, I got to go charge?
I mean, yeah, they only ended up charging. I mean, they only ended up like for that 20-minute session going down, I don't know, 10-15% or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So you still had from 325 miles, you still were like 260 or something.
But everyone was charging in between because you want to stay kind of, above 50%. You start below 50%, you definitely start to take a performance hit.
Yep.
So but it was awesome. And if that's just now where electric vehicles and a performance electric car is now, like I can't imagine what it's going to be like in 5 more years. It'll just be no question, in my opinion. It was
in 5 years when the Roadster comes out.
Yeah.
That's the hardcore smackdown.
Yes, it will be. It will be, because seeing how well this car already performed.
One quip about the Roadster. Did you see that on Twitter? Elon downgraded the performance.
Yes.
I think he said rocket engines. I don't think that's the right term he meant, but without the gas thrusters.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But so the thing I thought was really interesting about that. So he previously was 0 to 60 in 1.9, and he said now it's 2.1. Now, and then I think there was some confusion. Was that the 0 to 100 kilometers, which is like 62 miles,
right?
Something like that. And I think he responded, no, it's 0 to 60 time. So the reason I think that is interesting is because Jason Fensky over at Engineering Explained did this whole breakdown of how it is physically impossible to get under 2 seconds with a production car.
Wow.
And then literally he did that video before Tesla came out with 1.9 seconds. And then he did a whole follow-up video explaining how, like, all right, well, until we see it in real life, I'll take your word for it. But and then he went into here's how they could possibly do that. And again, it always comes down to with these cars is the tires.
Yeah, of course.
The tire needs to be able to maintain traction, to maintain a grip on the ground to move you forward.
Yeah.
Like the horsepower and torque and everything else is irrelevant because you have.
If you have a bicycle tire with 1,000 horsepower, you're going to put about 2 horsepower to the ground.
Right. You have effectively infinite horsepower.
Right.
Like you just get that out of the equation. And so that's what he was saying is like they must have a specialized tire. And the ones that they showed in the rendering were the Pilot Cup Sport 2 or something from Michelin. And so he says we actually have a rating on that. And so that's not possible, basically. And then so now for Elon to come out and say this, it's like, oh, okay, maybe he was right.
Wow.
You know, because there was a while there where he was like, I guess I'm wrong, but we'll see. And now it's like, I don't know.
So weren't they just showing that when they revealed the car and were giving people test drives? Like, weren't they actually? Didn't I see some videos where people actually had like a stopwatch and they were able to show it?
I'm guessing there's probably some user slack there too. You know, people doing time frame, time coding on like a video frame and measuring it, and it's probably around 2 seconds. But there's definitely going to be some, there.
What would have been really cool, and if anybody had even anticipated that it was going to be there, someone could have figured this out. I actually bought one of those things called a Draggy that does this, and it lets you keep track. So you have an app on your phone, and you have a little device that has a really accurate GPS signal. And it's totally legit. Like if you go to a drag strip and you have it, they will accept that as your official time.
Wow.
I didn't see anything like that, but that's what you would need. I don't think a stopwatch or even a camera. It's just going to be impossible to try to get that without some super accurate equipment, I would say.
Yeah, and remove human error from that.
Yeah.
But the cold gas thruster, the SpaceX package for the Roadster, I've had a Thunderfoot used me as an example on YouTube of how impossible it is. While first off, on that topic. if you're what's that called, like the straw man argument, his straw man argument this whole time was saying that Elon says it's going to fly, and he's saying like, here's Elon talking about how he hates flying cars, yet he's making a flying car and acting like they're going to use cold gas thrusters to fly around the city. You're right there, you're wrong.
This thing's gonna go like,
it will physically be able to hop and maybe hover for like a second or 2 or 3 tops.
Which sounds like a terrible idea generally.
Which is a terrible idea generally. But they're going to do that just to show off.
Until you do it.
Likely that won't even make it. That ability won't make it into the production car for safety reasons, I'm guessing.
Right.
Like, they won't say But then he went on, explain how here's what happened. You can't use compressed air as a thruster. And he shows literally like an $80 air compressor from Menards that he pressurized to 40 PSI and just took a air hose and goes in a chair and goes, like, that's not what this, have you heard of a COPV? Like, it's a lot higher pressure. If that was true, the Falcon 9, which has that same system, it's compressed, compressed nitrogen in a COPV, at thousands of PSI, like 5,000 PSI, not 40. And, going out a proper DeLaval nozzle, a proper like actual, accelerating nozzle, and it produces a significant enough thrust to move around a 20-ton, rocket in the vacuum of space. And of course, if you have enough of those around a car, the big question is like whether or not, how can you compress air fast enough without like some of those compressors are massive that do that. So that's definitely a question. But
I don't think I would get the SpaceX options at all. Like,
I would love it just because it sounds awesome.
I'm just a little like, I just don't like, I'm good with just the car as it is,
I'm sure it'll be $100,000 package too.
Yeah.
Wouldn't those thrusters need to be refilled from time to time as well?
Yeah.
Where would you do
the
that?
idea is that Regen, that's the idea, is that the car can either direct, because it's all just, you're taking kinetic energy of the car moving forward. So you can either have, the motors turn into generators and remove some of that kinetic energy and regenerate the battery. Mm-hmm. So now you're turning it into electrical energy. Or you could have on that same drive shaft, like an air compressor, a really massive That's the thing that's the curious question is, but under hard braking,
you just go to
should be
Menards
refilling.
and you just buy a new one and you shove it in there.
No,
$80.
that's the idea. When you're under hard braking, it should be spinning a pump then, which would do the braking for you and refill those pumps.
That would probably sound terrible though.
I don't know. Who knows? At this point, yes, there is some skepticism. Thunderfoot, you're right to be skeptic about certain things, but to call it all entire, he forgets that, like,
I wouldn't
if
bet
Elon,
against Elon.
I was going to say, if Elon says he's going to take the stuff from his rocket and put it in a car, you're like, duh.
You know, the bigger thing would be the internet, and Elon's talked about that. So in terms of like the Starlink stuff,
oh yeah,
like taking some of the SpaceX technology and integrating it into Tesla stuff, that one I think everyone agrees would make a ton of sense.
Yeah.
But the antenna and equipment you need is kind of not going to fit with the aesthetic that Franz and his team are really going for. So probably not going to work, right? Maybe.
You just put a pizza box on top of your car.
Yeah.
Speaking
you can hide
of,
it in the trunk.
Yeah, or in the frunk. So speaking of things in space, we have two big NASA things this week. That was the most SpaceX talk we're going to have this week, which is unusual. So NASA had two exciting things happen. Number one, they announced finally, not finally, right on schedule. NASA told us what date they're going to be announcing this like years ago. It was between Dragonfly and Caesar. So Dragonfly is a nuclear-powered drone that's going to fly around on Titan, which is, of course, a moon of Saturn. And versus they were going to go back to like where Rosetta is, that one comet, and do a sample return mission from a comet. But I'm so glad that they did this. They chose this. And this is a flagship mission. This is a very
this is a big deal.
This is a huge deal.
Isn't Titan billed as one of the ones that people could potentially inhabit?
Yeah, it is. It's surprisingly habitable.
Because the gravity and then all the other resources and stuff like that.
The main thing is that it's really, 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 really cold. Like minus.
Oh, underground though, you could.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, it's a minus like 100 degrees Celsius, I think, ish, or something like that. Like really cold, but it actually
lakes
has
of frozen methane.
Yeah, that's how cold it is. You could go swimming in frozen methane, and of course, that would not be fun. But the atmosphere is thicker than our own, which is nice because then you don't have to worry about like pressurization suits. You know, like you can.
Yeah, the air pressure is really
outside.
close to ours.
Yeah, it's actually thicker. I think by a good 50 or 60% even. It's crazy. So that's good. It's really cold, and it doesn't have any breathable atmosphere. The atmosphere would basically kill you to breathe. Although I think it's mostly nitrogen, which doesn't kill you, but yeah,
kills you slowly.
It kills you slowly. Yeah. But it's really, really exciting. But the problem is, when's this thing? Did I put that article in there, Joe? It has the dates. I think they don't launch until like 2028 or something.
All you shared was this Twitter post on that one.
So,
oh poop! Click on that link. Click on the link there on that tweet.
Without taking us too far off topic, a nuclear-powered drone.
It's an MMRTG, which is a
massively multiplayer. No, but okay. So okay. Did anyone here have a grasp of nuclear power and how that works?
A tiny bit.
So you heat up water really, really fast, and it spins a turbine, and then that generates electricity.
For like a nuclear power plant here, yes.
Right. Okay.
But not for these RTGs.
Okay. Because when I hear that, I'm like, okay, where are you getting the water? What are you doing with the steam?
Well, they actually can do a Stirling engine, which is just where you take air and it moves a piston, and then you just recirculate the air, and the heat moves a piston, and you can create electrical energy from that. But RTGs like this, this is one of those moments where guys just give me all the grace in the world because I have no idea. Something happens and it makes electricity for a long time. Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. I've heard of those things.
Well, that's what curiosity. The big thing with RTGs is they produce a crazy amount of heat, but it doesn't have any moving parts. So one of the good things is you can use that to keep mostly like on Mars Curiosity and this, that it needs one of the things you could either do like electrical heaters and keep your circuit boards in your spacecraft heated, or in this case, you just take the RTG's heat and you heat the spacecraft. Yeah. And then it can also produce some electricity. So your electricity demand goes way down because the spacecraft is able to be heated by the RTG.
And so what is it, Moore's law, where things get smaller and smaller every so many years?
Yeah.
That's
So
more
can I
about
have a
processing power.
Yeah, and storage.
What I'm hoping for is a nuclear-powered cell phone, so my battery never dies.
I just don't think we really
Put that
want.
right up against your head.
Yeah. Have you seen The Martian where he carries the RTG?
No.
Yeah.
He was listening to
Yeah, that's what he
discos,
uses
so-
to heat the
knows?
rover thing.
Yeah.
Yep. So not maybe.
Okay, so nuclear-powered drone. Got
Yeah.
it.
So it's a hex, or it's a octocopter, because it actually has 8 blades, but it's on just 4 arms. So there's a blade on top, blade on bottom. And the crazy thing is, it's going to be vision driven only. They're not. You can't actually map the surface of Titan because its atmosphere is so thick and so dense. They can't do good observations enough to make any decent topography maps or anything.
Right.
So this is going to have to, once it flies under, it's quite clear. We've sent one. Was it Huygens? Was that what it was, Joe? That was on Cassini. Yeah. Parachuted down and basically just took some video on its way down, and that's all we have of the surface of Titan. So we have some data to realize, okay, it could visually fly,
right?
And it's going to have to do entirely autonomous visual flight, and radar, some other sensor suites, but to actually navigate where it's going will be entirely vision based.
Wonder if Tesla's going to sell them those FSD chips that they just made.
I mean, it's going to take some. The thing about NASA, because that's the other part. I went to JPL yesterday and I actually got to see the Mars helicopter that's going to go on Mars 2020. Yeah. I was 10 feet from the actual copter that's going to actually be on Mars, which is.
It wasn't just the replica, or
no, the thing, the hardware, not test hardware, the hardware, and it was not even in a clean room yet. It was still in a vacuum room. They opened up the thing. I'm standing literally from here to Joe's thing.
Wow.
You
didn't spill your soda on it, did you?
I spit on it. I'm going to put life on Mars.
There you go. Organic material.
But and they're talking about how NASA is just so conservative with their approach to things. When you're sending a multi-billion dollar mission to anywhere, you want to do only as little new variables of we're going to rely on this new system that we've never tested anywhere. So the stuff, the vision flying and stuff they're going to be doing is already a huge, massive, oh God. And if you put too much AI, too much
because
unknown variables in it.
Actually, will you even have much of a link back to Earth? It'll be pretty bad, I would imagine.
It'll be
and depending on where the
low amount of data
are aligned, you could be total black window.
So then you won't be flying it at all because of a multi
But just the learning
of
it,
hours to get there.
Yeah, I think an hour or two or something delay.
Because I would imagine what will happen is kind of how the Tesla fleet does its training, for objects on the road, where they have hundreds of thousands of cars doing this all the time. This would be more like, hey, go take a little test flight, send me a ton of footage.
Yep.
We'll have a team of interns just say, what is that? What is that? What is that? Things it doesn't recognize.
Yep.
Do this 50 times, and then you can go on your own kind of maiden voyage.
Yeah, I don't know.
I would imagine, because training an algorithm or a machine learning architecture on that, unless it looks familiar to us, is going to be really difficult for the computer to figure it out.
Right.
If it looks like other things that we've seen, and those other things behave in similar ways, like a rock, or but if it's you fly over it and it comes at you or something,
right,
you're not going to have. It's going to have very little chance of working, right? So you're going to have humans with our brains picking all that information out until it has enough kind of local knowledge.
I don't know if they're going to be able to do that, because they'll use radar and maybe LiDAR and a few different things to just. And there's nothing. It can't run it. There's no trees, or really things like that. So the topography is probably relatively simple. Of course, there could be canyons and things and mountains,
right?
But those things, I think, would be relatively easy for them to program. To avoid, especially using radar.
I wonder even a horizon, because if the atmosphere is a certain way and there's clouds and things like that, will it be able to discern
right?
You know what I mean? Unless we have photos of it to tell it, or unless those things look how we are used to them looking, is what I'm saying. It may literally start to fly off in a totally wrong direction.
Well, they have IMUs and the gyroscopes and accelerometers and things that will.
So it's not just vision driven, is what you're saying.
Well, it's not. No. There's a whole sensor suite, but it will navigate using vision.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So it's not.
They probably narrowed that scope to where cool, like we can figure this.
And that's
out.
actually something that the Mars 2020 helicopter, I'll call it a helicopter because I don't know what else to call it, is going to be using a very similar vision system. So that's a good tech demonstrator. It's a really good tech demonstrator actually for to
teach this one.
Yeah. Yep. So they'll learn how to use some of that stuff. So
are you saying there's a gyrocopter on the Mars 2020 rover? Or are you talking about when it lands? Because I know when it lands, it's going to have some system on it where it can like find a good place to land and steer toward it.
No. So Mars 2020 we use sky cranes like Curiosity did.
Right. Yeah.
And do that. Once the rover touches down, one of the first thing it does is lays an egg, basically, and that egg is a dual rotor, about a little over a meter long, has 2 rotors, and they're contra rotors, so they spin opposite of each other. And it's 1.7 kilograms, so not even like 4 pounds. Tiny, like really big, but very lightweight, and it's actually sitting on the belly of 2020, which is still the official name of it, Mars 2020 rover. And then the rover will drive away, leaving the helicopter there. And then since they don't want any interaction between the helicopter and the again $1 billion rover, they wait for the rover to get far enough away, and then they'll start playing around with the helicopter, basically. But
that's cool. I didn't know that they were going to have that on there.
It was a very underground. Everyone was kind of rooting for it. It wasn't very well known because NASA, I don't think, wanted to make a big deal of it if they couldn't get funding, and they ended up approving it. So just recently, only a few months ago, approved it.
I imagine I've never been, I do have a friend that works there, but I don't know anything about the internal politics or just how they approach things. But I imagine because they're publicly funded, they have to be super, super cautious.
Yeah.
Whereas a SpaceX or a Blue Origin, it's you mess something up, you broke thing.
Yep.
Okay, well, Bezos or Musk will just write you another check.
And not that, but they're not beholden to anybody. They're not.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's not the taxpayer dollars that just screw this thing up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But so between those two, we're starting to get familiar with flying around on other planets, which I think is, quite good.
So what was the other big NASA item?
Speaking of flying around other planets. Joe, did you watch The Ascent?
No, I didn't get a chance to watch it.
It was very short. It's a simple mission. So NASA, but this is exciting because it is showing that NASA is still pushing ahead with the Orion spacecraft, which, I've had ups and downs and yays and nays and all sorts of thoughts on Orion, but I am realizing that Orion would be an unbelievably safe bet to actually send, if we do the Artemis program, getting humans out to the moon and back on the spacecraft is looking more and more like a very, very safe way to do so. So what they did is they put, this was basically a dummy version of Orion. So it wasn't really an Orion. They were mostly testing the abort system. So there's an launch abort tower that rode on top of a Peacekeeper missile, which is just a solid rocket motor. And it burned for, I think, just a little over a minute or whatever. The whole thing only lasted 3 minutes. And at about 10 kilometers in altitude, 6 miles in altitude, they lit the abort motor. And we're about to see that here right now, right at max Q, which, boom, if you're watching, so right at the point of maximum aerodynamic pressure, then they light the abort, and the abort tower still has a steerable set of thrusters at the top, which point it in the correct direction, make sure it's going the right way. And that was the end of that mission. They were just testing the fact that it could do this. And then actually it ejected, which is I didn't realize until later. They ejected 12 little pods.
Wow.
That were all data pods. And then they successfully recovered all 12, just in case they lost telemetry. They had
that's cool watching that thing fall. This is the end of Koyaanisqatsi.
I don't know what that is, Joe.
Oh, that went over everyone's head. Somebody out there heard me say that and thought, that's hilarious.
I have literally no idea what you just said. Just like Koyaanisqatsi.
Yeah, right. To me, it kind of looked like Inception and the last thing where he spins the dreidel, but go ahead.
There's a series of movies. The first one is called Koyaanisqatsi. It's from the early 80s. Godfrey Reggio is the filmmaker, and it's a very, I swear you have heard the soundtrack and you have seen some visuals from it. It's like it's a visual poetry kind of thing of like Earth and people and society and all that kind of stuff. But the very end, it shows, and you would probably know which one it is, Tim, but some explosion, some rocket exploding, and then it's just like the thing like turning and falling down with smoke coming off of it for like ever, with this creepy music playing on top of it, and then it fades to black. That's the end of Koyaanisqatsi. There you go.
Ooh. Okay, I will watch that.
It's definitely worth watching. It's a cool movie.
I hope it's not Challenger at the end, because there is footage where one of the tracking cameras.
This was before that.
Okay. Are you sure you said 80s?
And for our next movie review.
Yeah.
Well, no, it is part of a trilogy. So there's Koyaanisqatsi, Pakoikatsi, and Naskokatsi or something like that. Yeah.
I think I've heard of one of those because someone just, I think Ryan Chelinsky was just talking about how it's, okay. I need to culture myself a little bit more, apparently, I think.
It's worth sitting down and having a drink and watching. It's kind of creepy.
Maybe I'll do that tonight. I don't know. It's kind of creepy. Everyone watch it.
There you go.
But so that, Joe, I ended up putting in another. Let's go through this quick. So, by the way, this took off from Launch Complex. What was it? 46.
Cape Canaveral.
At Cape Canaveral Air Force Base. Yeah.
Yes.
So altogether, the 3-minute and 13-second event. There we go. But totally a huge success. And there's 12 ejectable data recorders. They were totally recovered already with it, like just an hour later, basically. It reached a maximum speed of over about 760 miles an hour, so like 1,200, 1,300 kilometers an hour. So, max was 1,000 miles an hour, so 1,600 kilometers an hour. So in other words, it sped up by about 30% when the launch abort tower hit. So no, not insanely fast or anything, but this was just to do it at the peak point of where the pressure on the vehicle is the greatest, because that's the hardest place for an abort system to work. And SpaceX will have to be doing something. SpaceX was supposed to be doing this already this summer, but the spacecraft that they were going to use to test this in-flight abort like this is the one that blew up a few months ago, on April 20th.
Not this. Oh yeah. And they made a patch for the abort test. Okay.
Yeah. That's pretty normal. These are cool missions. This is fun, like proper hardware testing, and it's awesome. So huge congrats. But yeah, so this is something, actually an interesting topic. Boeing is not doing an in-flight abort test of their CST-100 Starliner. So that's their capsule that's going to be sending crew to the International Space Station. Boeing is not.
How are they getting away with that?
Through further, basically through more validation of other systems. So you can either test with hardware.
Will it have an abort system?
It will have. Yep, it has an abort system, and they can test it on the ground. And they've already done a ground abort. They're already doing different things.
The only time we've done that was the Soyuz recently. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the first time. An actual in-flight abort that was using the main jettison, because they've done in-flight abort with another Soyuz in the 80s. They've done a pad abort once with the Soyuz.
Right.
But an in-flight abort was using the actual abort motors like that was just a very recent thing. So it is still an important thing, because you never know when there could be a failure, especially booster separation. Max Q is always, even though I don't remember the time, I don't think there's been a max Q failure where the maximum aerodynamic pressure did something to the vehicle. It's always the call out, like vehicle experiencing maximum aerodynamic pressure or max Q. And it's always a call out, because I think for a long time that was a really tricky, point that was really probably had a lot of failures. But it's still a portion where you want to make sure that at any point through your entire envelope you can abort away from any scenario.
Has SpaceX really brought that stuff to just kind of normal conversation, or is it just because I hang out with you nerds so much that I'll say things like, "Oh, that's the max Q of a thing."
Oh,
this is the max Q of the Tesla factory is about 90,000 vehicles per quarter.
I don't think that's a normal thing.
Because I think I watched a different launch, and they had basically the same SpaceX kind of setup.
Yeah.
Where it was all the steps, but it was Rocket Lab. Yeah, and they had it on the left-hand side going up.
Yep.
And I'm like, good, but I feel that's exactly kind of what SpaceX does. And now people that maybe weren't into rockets and space before see this stuff, and you have some familiarity because everybody's seen the Falcon Heavy put the Roadster up and things like that, right? Or like the first time rockets were landing back on drone ships. I think like it really has renewed general interest.
Back in the day, you know, when you watched the space shuttle launch, you didn't have any overlay, but you'd still hear the comms director and, you know, do call outs like max Q, vehicles now experiencing maximum aerodynamic. You know, you still would hear that.
People just didn't know what it meant.
Yeah, and not that I don't think it was that big of a spectator sport per se, you know. And now I think it's just a little bit more accessible.
With now as many launches and many companies.
Well, and that's one of the things that I do, not to fanboy a little bit here, but what I do like about how SpaceX kind of handled everything was, I mean, again, I was a guy with the space shuttle on my wall growing up and everything, but I had never heard of Max Q before. And then I started watching their launches, and it's like, oh, that's cool, you know. And I learned some things about how it all goes down and what that means.
I think
an
that's
educational
exactly.
Opportunity.
It is, yeah.
So shout out to the people at SpaceX for making it accessible. You know. Yeah,
and just bringing it in a new age media that we can digest and visually learn along, you know, where it's just where they don't play dumb, you know, they're not like, oh, well that is, but they just present it to you and kind of just give you glimpses of cool things. And it almost just sparks curiosity, I think.
They make it accessible, you know, and interesting.
It's just a great balance between like new facts and all that stuff. Oh, Joe, you found your
speaking of an educational opportunity.
Wygotsky. That looks like an atlas. Oh yeah.
Actually,
someone's not having a good day. We're watching the end of the movie here.
It looks from here.
Can you hear the music?
Because it had 3 engines. No.
You can't hear the music?
No, we don't want to hear the music. What do you?
No, you want to hear the music. That's what makes it really. And I promise you, when you hear it, you'll be like, "Oh, I've heard that somewhere before."
Okay. Can you sing it a little bit?
No, I cannot.
We don't want to get a copyright.
It's literally like a very deep voice going Koyaanisqatsi over and over again. So you know the name.
Really?
Yeah.
Now we're just gonna have to replay that 20 times.
It's like like over and over again.
Huh.
But yeah, just see this shot for like.
That's epic. I've never. It's a good reference, but I had no idea what you're talking about. But that's awesome.
Kobayashi. Okay. Got it.
So also, Joe, I did send you our Why Don't They Just this week in our
and Joe has a story for us too, I think, doesn't he?
I got a couple. I got a couple things I was going to point out, but you know, we can just kind of like just talk about them real quick.
No, I want the full Joe today. We need a full dose.
Full Joe.
I barely even read the.
Well, let me do this. Why don't they just real quick because it's in tied to this. So Gibson99.com asked, why don't they just use parachutes like normal and recover the test capsule with the data recorder still attached? And that's all. So the question is, why do they like ditch all those data recorders and all that stuff as opposed to just parachute? Because normally if they were to do an in-flight abort like this, the capsule would, you know, spin around and pull its parachutes and recover the crew safely. But they didn't do any of that. They just did the abort and then let the capsule crash, basically.
Oh, really?
And they ejected the data recorders that floated, you know, I don't even think they had parachutes. I think they were just kind of in like black boxes.
Huh.
And the answer, I think, Gibson to this is they've already tested, like they're testing just system by system by system. They've tested the parachutes a million times. That does require, I mean, could get a lot more expensive if they actually had a proper Orion capsule with the systems to be able to control and then pull the drogue chutes and all that stuff and do all of that would be significantly more expensive, adding new variables. They already have that cover of that portion of recovery done, especially EM1 in December 2015. They launched an actual Orion spacecraft out on a highly elliptical orbit. They did re-entry. They did a proper splashdown. That was a really good validation of all of those systems. So it's a lot cheaper and simpler to just worry about, you know, have a boilerplate, have a mass simulator inside the abort tower, do that, and then just simply eject the recorders and call it a day, and just have it be a way simpler system than having a proper spacecraft of any kind. I mean, saving literally hundreds of millions of dollars probably, as opposed to just like dink, like just ejecting some shoeboxes out. You know,
well, it sounds to me kind of what you're saying is like a lot of just how the scientific method and things work. Like you only change one variable at a time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so if you're only looking to test one thing, then you don't.
Just test the one thing. Basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep. And that's a very NASA approach. Like, let's not try to test a bunch of things. Let's just test the thing we want to test. And
do they ever do a full complete system test before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
like
but the
everything is ready.
The thing is, even with a full complete system test, you still have variables. Like you wouldn't, a full complete system test, hopefully they aren't having to do a launch abort, an in-flight launch abort system test. Hopefully, but that could always be a possibility. So the system will be armed and active, able to do that when they do the first full up. You know, they'll probably fly Orion on SLS at some point, relatively soon, in about 2 or 3 years. And at that point, it will be an all-up test, and we'll have all of those systems in place. Hopefully, I know that actually the first CST-100 Orion test won't have its abort system actually activated. It'll be armed, but it won't be fueled up because there will be no one on board.
Right.
So I still think in that case, I'm like, well, if you're already flying the thing, why don't you do all of it? I don't know.
Why don't you just?
So there you go. That's our Why Don't You Just reminder. If you have a good Why Don't They Just, tweet us and or put it in the comments. We've had some good ones lately.
Or you could join us on Patreon and post it in our private chat on Discord.
Yeah, that'll take precedence.
Plug.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's also that.
Yeah. We finally got that all set up. So we'll be hanging out in there sometimes answering you guys' questions.
There's 2 people in there already. So.
And I like the idea that 2 people can talk about the shows amongst themselves, have other people that they know listen to the show talking about the show. And and we'll be
I think we need to send a shout out to Dakota for all the help that she did. I think there was somebody else, but I don't know him. I do know Dakota. She was very, very cool and did a lot of work on it.
Well, Loopy from my Discord server came to help, but he's like, honestly, I'm like really swamped. I'm like, oh, like I added him to like help set it up, and like I really can't right now, but he, I brought him in anyway to do that. But yeah,
do it anyway.
Do it. Yeah,
this wasn't a question.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Joe, what do you have?
Oh, the other story?
Yes.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Joe.
So there was all this talk for a while about Uber wanting to get into the autonomous flying car world. And there's some other little startups that have been talking about that. This was kind of cool. So one of those startups that have been working on it, who is backed by Larry Page, who was like one of the original Google guys, isn't he? Isn't that Larry Page?
Yeah.
Him and Sergey.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, this company is called Kitty Hawk, based from Kitty Hawk, the place where the Rover Brothers, I can't talk. So they got into a partnership with Boeing, who knows how to fly some things. And that was kind of big news. So they're actually looking at getting on board with Boeing, and they're going to do this whole semi-autonomous flying taxi thing. It's like a 2-seater, I believe. So you would just kind of get in this thing and it would fly you to the other part of town without you having to do anything and no driver.
Is it vertical takeoff and landing, or how can it fly around town without just like going to the airport and having it be private?
VTOL? I think it is.
That picture doesn't lend itself. Although the Osprey is kind of like that too.
Right, where the propellers could pitch up or something.
Yeah.
I don't understand how it's flying when the propellers aren't spinning.
Oh. Now, didn't they have a version of this that was like a motorcycle on a drone? Or was that a different one of these like self-driving or like personal?
There's several of them. There's one called Blackfly. And that one's like weirdly not really VTOL. It kind of like, it doesn't really have the landing gear. It just sort of like sits on the ground and scoots away in a weird convention.
So it can take off in like 20 feet or something.
Something like
Seems
that.
Sketchy, man.
Yeah.
STOL, short takeoff and landing.
Stall.
It is actually, I think that's actually a thing. I think like Harrier jump jets, they can do vertical takeoff and landing, but lots of times when they're like on a marine carrier deck, they will do a stall. They'll do like a short takeoff and landing where it's, a lot shorter runway.
Yeah.
I think that's what that's called.
Yeah, there's another company called Lilium that has their own. I think they actually do electric.
Looking at the picture of this, it looks like actually the props on the wings are all pointed up, and there's one pusher prop in the back. So maybe it is totally designed and ready to go for VTOL.
This doesn't seem that efficient though. Like the Uber Air thing seemed like it made a lot of sense, where it was a drone basically like a passenger-sized drone ship, which I've been in at CES, and it was wild. And that thing, the idea was it would just take off from like building like JFK to a building in Manhattan or something.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But this thing, there's like no way this would get you somewhere in Manhattan.
Oh yeah, I've seen Blackfly. That is awesome.
Okay, so this is the one that we're talking about here.
Look, from this angle you can tell it has 12 props pointed up.
Yeah.
So you could get all of your vertical takeoff and landing ability there, and then a pusher prop in the back.
Look and see if they have a video of it flying, but I don't see one.
Wait for Thundercat to post a video about how it's not possible.
Thundercat or Thunderfoot? Because Thundercat's a cool band.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thunderfoot.
I think I only saw that because from something you guys sent me. Now, I think this is the one I saw at CES. It's a massive ship, right? Or no?
The Blackfly? Really, so this was the weird one I was talking about that just kind of like, I mean, look at it.
It looks like an alien ship.
What is happening?
I got you.
It's so
people,
cool.
It's just like, it looks like the letter H.
Or letter I.
Sideways?
Right now, vertical.
Capital I, sure.
Yeah, and the pilot's like sitting on their back right now. They can't even see where they're going as they're taking off straight up.
Well, it's autonomous.
And
though,
the sun's
right?
just blasting in your eyes.
Oh, that looks so cool, though.
I don't know. Would you do it? Like, do you guys think this is a good idea?
I think some.
Okay, so you see that right there? Do you see what it just did?
Oh yeah, I did see that. It just scooted off the ground. It like just kind of dragged the belly, didn't it?
So it just kind of scoots right up. Oh, I got you. But it still has to go. I don't know, man. It looks fun.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'm going on a trip if this is what I'm doing. There was the French one recently that I forget what it's called, but they had it's electric and it can go, I think, like 300 kilometers distance or something that. Yeah, and it was the same concept. And it was a vertical takeoff and land. Like it has, I think, 12 or 16 electric motors on each wing. And they're basically like sandwiched in between the top and bottom of the wing. Yeah. And they turn up and you take off, and then they kind of turn this way and you start going forward.
Yep. Dang.
I think Lilium was.
Yeah, Joe. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on flying cars, flying personal transport like this?
I mean, there's a part of me that loves the idea. Of course, you know. I mean, what I'm most worried about is noise, because I mean, when you have like even just a small drone, you know, if you had those things flying everywhere, you know, 20 times as big, that seems like it would get really loud really fast. I have heard that there's some kind of technology that can cut down on the amount of noise. Somebody told me about that actually when we went to the SpaceX launch, because he was working on something like that himself, but I don't know the details of it or how that would work. But
even just the propellers now on the newer drones are super quiet.
They are getting a lot quieter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely a concern, right?
Oh, for sure. Noise.
So Dallas is one of the places where one of these companies, I guess Uber actually, was going to try to get something set up here for that. So this might be
Dallas
a test
makes
market
sense because it's such a big, like physically huge city. Dallas is, and Houston, like those are just, because they don't like cram it. It's in the middle of Texas, you know. So suburban sprawl just goes in all directions.
We're not even
constrained by anything now in LA.
Yeah,
LA is massive too, like that. Yeah, just like, is this a case of induced demand though, where like now that this exists, people will take it, but like this won't help traffic, I guess is my point. Right?
Not until
you know the whole concept
or something.
The whole concept is like you add a lane to the freeway, and it makes it alleviates traffic for a short period of time, but then more people realize that, oh, it's good now because there's an extra lane, and more people come, and now it's the same as it was before. There's a whole thing in economics where you look at these things and you say, does it actually help? Or is it just like stunting the worsening of a thing?
It's actually counterintuitive, the traffic thing, because you think adding more lanes would give you more volume, but it actually
doesn't.
It actually can make it worse because more people get on the road.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. There's more accidents and everything. And
I'm with Joe that I would definitely ride in one. But man, how are you? Yeah, like, are you gonna have micro airports now, like helipads?
That's what I'm getting at. Like, I don't see.
Are you still gonna have to have last mile transportation between the helipad and where you're trying to go?
Thing. Yeah, I don't think it'll like drop it off in your front yard or anything.
Right.
Just parachute down.
Oh, that would.
Sky crane.
But actually, what if it actually had road legal status? Oh, but there's no way they'd be able to just like land on the road. You know,
Yeah,
even if it is VTOL.
It seems cool, I guess, is my take on it. But I don't see the function of it other than you're either just rich and in a hurry, or
right.
Which at that point, you can already just take a helicopter somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
It could be substantially cheaper to operate than it. I mean, a helicopter is like insanely cost prohibitive because of fuel costs and everything. I mean, we're talking like $1,000 an hour for.
No, it's not that much
for a chartered Yeah.
No.
I mean,
I'm telling you, it's not. I'm telling you, because I looked at taking one. Anyways, yeah. But the point being, like, okay, maybe it's cheaper, but still, it's only transferring 2 people at a time. Like this thing needs to be like a bus with like 40 people on it before it starts to actually do anything. That's my take. I don't know. Seems cool.
Like a mass transit.
We'll see. I mean, if they do set something up here in Dallas, I will definitely want to try and make a video out of it and see if I can get in one for that reason, if nothing else.
For sure.
Casey Neistat did a thing in Vegas on one of these too. Did you see that? It was like a motorcycle.
Oh, I did see that where he flew that thing.
Yeah.
Near Vegas?
Yeah, I believe it was outside of Vegas. Yeah.
Didn't realize that. Yeah, that was cool.
Right. So there might be something here. Seems cool, I guess, is the thing.
It's cool. We'll see how it turns up. I would love it, but at the same time, not to say that like Elon's right, but like, I mean,
the Boring Company thing.
But tunnels make sense.
Make more sense. Yeah.
You know, a lot of tunnels. A lot.
The interesting thing about all of this is, like, I don't know if there's any solution to traffic, because even with boring tunnels, it's the concept of induced demand, where now that there's this thing, now people will take that. Cool. That frees up space on the roads. Guess what? More people are going to take those roads. Like it's like a phenomenon.
Eventually, you do have more infrastructure than.
We need to have physically fewer cars, I think, is the only way to really reduce traffic.
Well, but think of it this way. Like, there's abandoned cities in like China. And just because they have roads there doesn't mean that there's an increased demand in the cars on the road.
If they're abandoned.
But like at some point you can have.
There's no traffic in Slab City.
Yeah, like, but eventually you could probably run out of lanes and stuff.
No, man, I don't know.
I don't know either.
Traffic is a tough one. I don't know if we'll ever really solve it.
We need a plague.
Everyone's working from home. There you go.
Our ludicrous plague.
Yeah, we talked about that before, where like the number of children per family is dropping,
right?
And so at some point, population in the world will start to decline,
right?
And so everyone's freaking out about it, like, oh, what are we gonna do? Like, what do you mean? Like, I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah,
like fewer people mean fewer resources needed to sustain them, which means, I don't know, higher quality of life.
Yeah,
I think it's more of an economics thing. Like it's a contraction in the economy, and that's what they're worried about. But resource-wise, obviously, it would be much better.
And who will take care of the generation that's retiring and stuff like that, you know, all of that.
Robots.
Just at some point, it's Star Trek, you know, at some point.
O'Neill cylinders.
Yeah, there you go. Just go live up there and have little surrogate bodies, or becomes a simulation.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Wasn't that a movie with Jodie Foster in it where all the rich people lived on big
the Ring
world?
Oh yeah,
something like that. And then the poor people were stuck down there.
What was that movie?
Elysium?
There was.
I think.
Was it Elysium?
Yeah. Who else was in that? Was that a Chris Pratt too or something?
Wasn't Matt Damon?
No, that was.
He was trying to fight to get up there or something.
Matt Damon. I can't hear that name without that.
Poor guy.
But there was another one with.
He's great.
There was another one with Bruce Willis that actually was more like this, where you went into this pod in a room in your apartment, and then like an android body of you walked around in the real world, and you were
Avatar.
Maybe.
I mean, Avatar.
I couldn't watch that movie. So, but
why you're allergic to blue?
I hate that actor. Oh, it's so bad. But anyways, but then like, so the idea was you could be like, 60 years old or something, but your body that you're walking around in is like your 20-year-old self. And then if that body dies in an accident or something, you just wake up in your little thing. And so it was just like a weird kind of, I don't know, the utopian or dystopian. I'm not sure which. Yeah, it was with Bruce Willis. I think it was called Surrogates. It was that same kind of idea that eventually, like, we'll all just.
Oh, okay.
Will we get there?
We have movie homework, apparently, all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah, no kidding.
Forget a book club. We're doing a movie club.
Seriously. Was there anything else on our table?
I think we did it, man. I think that was
exhausted it for today.
Wow. I hope that
Future is
the
officially
sound and
ludicrous.
video. I hope that everything recorded okay. There was a lot of, I can't tell you how many moving parts. I was like pushing buttons that I didn't know exist in the world on this panel that looks like it's the whole entire space shuttle.
I mean, it's not rocket science. It can't be hard.
Yeah.
It's like everybody watching this thinks this looks really great, and we're all panicking like this is garbage, this is a nightmare, nothing's working right.
We don't know. We have no idea. There's a great chance I'm not recording a thing.
It's a gamble, but that's what we do. That's why
it will be what it will be.
Yep. Well, is it, guys?
We'll see you
in our ludicrous
future. Hey, thanks so much for watching and or listening to Our Ludicrous Future. We really enjoy doing this, so if you like this show, we invite you to please go and give us a nice 5-star review on iTunes or your podcast listener thing of choice. And if you really love what we do have a Patreon set up now where you can go and donate whatever you can donate, and there's little perks that you can get from that, including getting your name in the credits, amongst other things. Access to us is pretty cool, so thanks again for listening, and support however you can, and we do appreciate it very much. Thanks.